In the meantime, today's program is supported by the University of Oregon Government and Community Relations, coordinating the University of Oregon's legislative and advocacy efforts at the federal, state, and local levels. And of course, Packing for Internet Solutions. Packing for Internet Incorporated, providing fast, friendly, and reliable internet solutions in Lane County since 1980. Thank you to KLCC 89.7 FM for airing our programs on Monday evenings at 6:30 p.m. And thank you to Community Television of Lane County for televising recent City Club programs on Monday through Friday noon, and Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and on Sundays at 9 p.m. So we cannot do these programs without having their support, especially KLCC and TV. This is free TV. You can tune in to watch the candidates once again. And with that in mind, Rachel, are you ready? Yes. All right.
A reminder to everyone, candidates, to be respectful of these questions that have been submitted by our City Club members in your answers, and we'll keep the answers to 1 minute, so do keep an eye on John when he's giving you the time check. We'll start with this question, which is for all the candidates. Can you discuss your positions on the Dakota Access Pipeline, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the Paris Climate Accord? In 1 minute, please. I think, looking at climate change, I think is kind of the gist of the question. We can start with, how about we start with Art Robinson? 1 minute.
Our world runs on energy. 97% of the machines that keep our people alive run on hydrocarbon energy. The diminishing of hydrocarbon energy will inconvenience us, but billions of people are still trying to lift themselves from poverty and tyranny using the machines that are run on hydrocarbon energy. Millions of those people will die if this failed hypothesis actually is implemented on a worldwide basis. I support nuclear power, I support hydrocarbon power, I support solar power. If anybody can make it work, I'll support wind power. We need energy to power our society and our technology, and we should not stand in the way of it for political purposes.
Would you like to go next, Congressman DeFazio?
Sure. Well, Art Robinson has said that climate change is a myth. I believe that climate change is human-caused, and it's one of the most serious problems confronting man and womankind in the world and all the beings that live here. We need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. I supported stopping the Keystone XL pipeline. We're now being sued under another trade agreement for $15 billion of lost profits. The TPP would make that even worse. They could sue us for any environmental law, any consumer protection law, any labor law in this country. So I'm totally opposed and leading the fight against the TPP. On the floor last week, working with Gwen Moore from Michigan, I helped pass an amendment that says the Corps of Engineers must undertake an official consultation process with the sovereigns whenever any project which they're permitting runs through their lands. And that was not right, and I'm pleased that the President has put that back and said they must consult.
Let's hear from Mike Beilstein.
Thank you. I just mentioned just this week on Monday, the Corvallis City Council passed a resolution which I brought to them in opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And this was done on the basis of the rights of the indigenous people of the United States and the need to protect our waterways and the commitment of the City Council to get away from fossil fuel investments as a means of powering our economy. I think that the major investment in fossil fuels is a dead end. We have to get out of that. I'd say about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, of course, I'm very much opposed to it. I don't know if there's going to be the power in Congress after the election. All these Democrats who say they're against it, now they're free and they can vote for it. And I'm afraid that the lame duck Democratic Congress, or lame duck Democrats in Congress, are going to bring enough support to actually pass it. So that's my prediction. It's not what certainly not what I want, and I really appreciate Congressman DeFazio's work to prevent the TPP from passing. Thank you.
Where to begin? I'm distrustful, as were the ancient Greeks, of anyone who claims to know everything under the sun. Now, there's supposed to be mathematics to prove the models that we've been given, the models for climate change, climate catastrophe, global warming. There has been incredible progress in carbon capture within the last 2 years. That means we just might luck out one more time. Nonetheless, renewables are the way to go. They're most efficient, least harmful, and with the exception of some hydroelectric projects, which have proven to be less than successful in terms of wildlife or the ecology in general. I would think that with the science, that global climate change can be targeted.
Okay. So this question kind of connects with that previous question, and it's for Congressman DeFazio, so this might be a quick answer. Where do you stand on a carbon tax?
Well, British Columbia has a very interesting version of a carbon tax. I proposed an alternative with Jim McDermott from Washington State, which is something we've done in the past, which is cap, regulate, and reduce. We didn't go out and create a market or do other things to tax to clean up the filthy rivers in this country. We said we're going to cap your current pollution, and we're going to mandate that you reduce it and eliminate it by a certain date. That's another way to get there, through regulation. We have to be careful with the tax because we do not want to have an inordinate impact on people who live in rural areas and other places. But I think BC has a pretty good model. I'm very interested in it.
Now, this one we'll move on to talk a little more about education. Art Robinson, this question is addressed to you. What is the evidence supporting your claim that DC public schools or any city public schools would perform better if the money were given directly to the teachers? Can you cite studies? What evidence do you have?
Well, first, to clean something up, Congress did pass those laws to improve the DC schools. Apparently they haven't realized that their constitutional responsibility for the schools has been overruled by Mr. DeFazio. When you have $450,000 per classroom, if you gave that to a teacher for 9 months, she could hire several assistants, raise her salary, get a great place to teach the schools, and give you a lot of the money back. Across the country, it's $300,000 per classroom. What's happening is that is funding, for the most part, non-teachers, who the unions, the bureaucrats, all of these non-teachers that have infested our educational system are messing it up. It's there to see, and an educator doesn't have any trouble seeing.
So we're going to move to another subject. This is the text of the question. Our rich economy has broken at the bottom. What can be done for the millions of homeless Americans? And since that all question went, I'll just go in a different order and start with Mr. Guthrie, so that everyone can answer this question.
As a libertarian who sees a lot of commonalities to the year 1856, in which the new Republican Party nominated a flawed candidate, John C. Freeman. I see a lot of parallels to today, and as this nascent Republican Party was searching around for allies, they came up with the Free Soil Party. Well, I'm for the Free Flet. What that is, a heated concrete structure in which any American can go be safe and warm and have a privy out back so it's hygienic. But these things are relatively easy to design architecturally, but to get the will to do it, to recognize that in a country as vast as this, that people cannot lay down and sleep. I don't think they should be able to sleep everywhere, but people should be able to find a spot. Thank you.
Then I believe Mr. Beilstein, you'll be next.
Thank you. Certainly every city along the West Coast and maybe other places is affected by the problem of homelessness. A lot of this homelessness is due to the lack of mental health care, the lack of drug treatment facilities. So I think a lot could be done, through just providing those services, which are essential for people who have a disability to live better lives. However, there's a larger overall housing problem in this country, which is the same as with our healthcare system, and that is that it's designed not to meet the needs of people, but it's designed to make profit for a few large corporations and the owners of those corporations. So that I think we have to start changing. What is our economy about? Is our housing economy about housing people, or is it about providing jobs for to build expensive houses which can benefit only those people who can afford $500,000 or more for a home? We have a severe housing shortage in Corvallis, and that certainly contributes to the people who can't find a place to live. Thanks.
And Congressman DeFazio, what would you do about the homeless situation?
This is a national problem that I recognized many years ago. Worked with my friend Bruce Bento in Congress, and we passed the McKinney-Vento Act. The federal government has avoided its obligation under the McKinney-Vento Act to partner with communities like Eugene. This is a national problem. We can't solve it city by city. It has to be solved nationally. And so the federal government has to be involved. We need to put more resources into that. Mike spoke very eloquently to the need for more drug treatment and more mental health care to help people with those problems get housed. We need to work better with our nonprofits, like St. Vincent de Paul is doing some great work in this area. And then I support a program very strongly that solves two problems. Helps kids who are at risk and need an education and homelessness. It's called Youth Build, where kids who are at risk, don't have high school degrees, are in a federal program where they build houses in cooperation with St. Vincent de Paul and other organizations to house people of very low income or homeless people. It's a great program, and we need to invest more there. We need more federal investment.
And Art Robinson,
The best thing we can do for our homeless people and for our sinking middle class is to get the government off the backs of the American people. Lower the taxes, lower the regulations, and give our people their freedom back to produce. And then this country will prosper, and we won't have so many of these people. In order to do that, we have to get rid of the people that continually raise taxes, raise regulations like this one. A career politician who has become personally rich, seeking power and money in Washington for his own benefit. We need to follow the Constitution, give our people back their freedom so that our country can produce again. And that's true in District 4 as well as in our national scene.
You mentioned money, and one of the questions that came from the City Club audience is regarding Congressman DeFazio. Someone thinks that you are a millionaire. Is that true? Are you a millionaire? Let's just get that sorted out.
Be sure to count the money in New Zealand.
Well, Art, unfortunately, if you read my disclosure, I sold the house in New Zealand, which was a good investment. I paid and I sold both, and I made a little money, and I paid capital gains. Art, you're trying to do a pretty good Donald Trump imitation, but you don't quite have the personality for it. Really, I'm sorry, I've given back a lot of my salary for a lot of years, unlike a lot of my colleagues. I didn't come to Congress wealthy. I've saved as much as I can every month. My wife saves as much as she can every month. I'm going to get a decent pension when I retire. But no, I'm not of that 1% or like the guy who supports you, the 1/100th of 1%, Mr. Mercer, who has dumped a couple of $1 million into your institute and spent $1.7 million against me. You've proposed he shouldn't pay any taxes and he shouldn't be regulated as a Wall Street speculator. Now, I think that's going in the wrong direction. They need my transaction tax, the speculator tax. They need to pay taxes like other working Americans, and they need to be regulated before they destroy our economy again.
Okay, remember to hold your applause, please, until the end. This does transition, and once again, a reminder to be respectful of each other and the City Club. This does connect with one of the questions that we got, which is about Citizens United and the Supreme Court. And Congressman DeFazio did mention, Mr. Robinson, that you have received funding from this fellow, Mr. Mercer, and who is also a contributor, I understand, to Donald Trump. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Robert Mercer is a scientist, an exceptional one who has done many things for his country and for science. He did not support us to the extent he said, but he gave a lot of money to PACs that supported the first two of my congressional campaigns, and he is supporting Donald Trump. Before that, Ted Cruz. But we can argue about the best way to fund political campaigns, but his party makes the most use of it. Hillary Clinton has far more money from such institutions than does the Republican candidate, and he is sore about a principled man who ran television ads against him. So he exaggerates what the guy did. He demonizes him. In fact, he demonized him after he'd only given me $2,400 for my campaign. Career politicians do not like competition. They don't like it from people like me, and it meant, incidentally, 8,500 people gave a total of $1.2 million to each of my first two congressional campaigns. Those weren't millionaires. Mr. DeFazio doesn't like competition, and he went after Robert Mercer the instant he realized that this man wished that he would not serve in office.
It does beg the question why he is so interested in what's happening in Oregon. If you'd want to respond to that, or we could have Congressman DeFazio first, and then you briefly.
Well, a recent article in Time magazine from a Republican operative was quoted saying, "I really pissed Mr. Mercer off because I want to impose a transaction tax on Wall Street speculators." But Art wants to exaggerate a little bit here. This one individual, because of the unbelievable right-wing activist decision of the Supreme Court under Justice Roberts, overturning 100 years of precedent and saying money is speech, corporations are people, and by the way, you can spend whatever you want on campaigns and you can hide the money. One guy from Wall Street who's never been to Oregon has spent $1.7 million against me. One individual in the last three campaigns, and he has contributed to Art's Institute, the institute which has proven that global climate change is a myth, since 2005, more than $1.62 million tax-free, plus all his contributions, and his daughter's contributions, and his wife's contributions to Art's campaign. One individual on Wall Street, never been to Oregon, has no interest in the state, but he does want someone who will represent his interests on Wall Street, repeal his capital gains taxes, and block my speculators tax.
Okay, just briefly, Mr. Robinson, you can have a quick response, then we'll move on.
Mr. Mercer's contributions to our research institute were all for our medical research, and they began long before I entered politics. The fact is that Mr. DeFazio has millions of dollars. He campaigns constantly for 2 years at taxpayer expense, sending out flyers, even advertising the corporatists that support him. He receives vast amounts of money from the special interests, not just direct money, but union help in the streets that's not reported directly, media help, help from newspapers that favor him because he's the congressman. I estimate that he probably gets $5 million in each campaign in substantive help to be reelected. He really should be willing to discuss the issues and not the money. He's got a lot more money supporting him than I have ever had supporting me. And it's difficult to reach the 350,000 households in a district the size of Switzerland without the kind of money and influence that Mr. DeFazio wields.
Let's move on now to talk about Oregon's rural counties. What should counties or the federal government be doing to alleviate budget shortfalls in lieu of secure rural schools funding, which looks like it's so far will not be renewed for this year? Let's go ahead and start with Mike Beilstein. It's been a while since you've gotten to talk.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk. I don't have any good answers. I know that like, certain rural counties like Curry County, which has benefited from the ONC money in the past, they have the lowest property taxes of any county in Oregon. So part of it is that, that these large property owners in these rural counties have to start actually paying taxes to support local government. If they want to have a library, if they want to have a county sheriff's office, then they've got to start paying for it. Now, I agree that because of their long history of dependence on the ONC money, maybe we should work out something better, and with the federal government stepping in to make up some of that money that they're no longer getting from the ONC money. But I really see a lot of the responsibility falling on the citizens of those counties who have not been willing to pay the taxes to support local government. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and hear from Gil Guthrie, if you'd like to comment.
I really don't have a comment on this, but I'd like to go back to Citizens United.
Okay, very briefly.
Well, if you recall, Citizens United was brought because Citizens United wanted to show a video critical of Hillary Clinton 2 weeks before the election. Well, look what happened. The video was never shown. The equation of money and speech and corporations with individuals is a time-honored confluence. If you go to the Uniform Criminal Code of the United States, doesn't page 1 say that for the purposes of the law, a corporation will be treated as a person? Well, the whole campaign finance dodge is written by incumbents who perpetuate their own power. That should be enough to see the double dealing there. Thank you.
So again, the original question was regarding secure rural schools funding. Let's go ahead and hear from Art Robinson first, and then we'll hear from Congressman DeFazio.
Well, the principal issue in District 4 is the destruction of our lumber industry, because our timber industry was deprived of access to our forests. Now, Harrison Schmitt, my friend Harrison Schmitt, was a Caltech scientist like me, but he was the last man to land a vehicle on the surface of the moon and served in the Senate. He taught me that career politicians don't fix problems, they ride on problems. That's what Mr. DeFazio did on the forest problem. He didn't use his influence to get access to the trees, so the forest industry died. He got welfare for the counties, welfare. And that's real good politics, because every 2 years you can say, hey, you better vote for me or that welfare won't keep coming. The career politician doesn't solve problems like a scientist. He figures out ways to benefit himself from those problems. And the destruction of the economies in the 4 counties that I win every time is a perfect example of that action by Mr. DeFazio.
I've spent an incredible amount of time on forest policy. It's like arguing about religion. And we have never struck the proper balance, in my opinion. We were overcutting and cutting precious and irreplaceable old growth when I ran for Congress, and I said we need to reduce the harvest. But now we're at a point with bureaucratic and legal gridlock where we've gone far further than we need to protect the old growth, our precious environment, and still sustain a viable rural lumber and wood products industry. Actually, Kurt Schrader, Democrat, and Greg Walden, Republican leadership, and myself wrote a bill a few years ago to actually try and legislate and have a discussion with the Senate over legislating a way out of this mess to produce more revenue in the rural counties, still protect the environment, but get more timber. We passed the bill in the House of Representatives. I don't work in the Senate. The Senate blocked it. Last summer we passed another more minor provision that would help with this out of the House, and it was blocked in the Senate. So I'm not exactly trying to perpetuate the problem. Art, maybe you should run for Senate next time.
So we have time for one more question, and then we'll go into our closing statements. This last week marked the 1-year mark of the shooting at Umpqua Community College. What could Congress do on gun control? What is your position on gun control and these kinds of tragedies? And we'll go ahead and start with Congressman DeFazio.
Back 3 years ago, when the Democrats still controlled the Senate, we thought we were going to pass reasonable national gun control legislation. Would have required background checks for all transactions, would have required enhanced mental health checks and other things. It closed a number of loopholes that we have today, gun show loopholes, online loopholes, and others. I was a co-sponsor in the House, bipartisan bill. It was blocked in the Senate by the Republicans. There's been no consideration by this Congress of moving forward on that issue. I'm proud that Oregon has moved ahead and taken some very strong steps in that area. I want to do those same things nationally. But Mike mentioned earlier, not only do we lack mental health services for people who are homeless, we lack mental health services and counselors in our schools to try and get ahead of these troubled kids, to detect them before they become dangerous and becomes a more serious situation. We need to invest a heck of a lot more in mental health in the United States of America.
Okay, and Art Robinson?
Well, I agree about mental health. I did a lot of research on mental health at Linus Pauling. The Constitution is very clear. The founders said that we have a right to bear arms, and that should be continued. We don't want to give that right to people who are not capable of having that responsibility, and I agree. But we shouldn't revoke the Second Amendment either, which is basically what his presidential candidate wants to do. It's important that we think about the advice of our founders. Thomas Jefferson was very clear on this. Benjamin Franklin was very clear. Washington was very clear. The people who built this great constitutional republic were unequivocal in their constitutional rule that the people have a right to keep and bear arms. We must protect that and at the same time make sure that people who cannot carry that responsibility not bear arms. Of course, criminals are the main people who bear arms, and they don't follow the law at all.
Okay, and I think Mr. Guthrie, you're next.
I've got a different slant on the right to bear arms. Seems to me, I'm a Lincoln man, what Mr. Lincoln did when faced with the primary issue of his times, slavery, he looked at the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 to see he looked at the ordinance to see how it applied to the framers of the Constitution, as there were a number of members who were both members of the Constitutional Convention and who wrote the Northwest Ordinance. Well, all of which is to say, let's look at the right to bear arms. What are they talking about? They're talking about a class of weapons, single shot, hard to load. That is the constitutionally recognized weapon. There are 4 types: long pistol, short pistol, long gun, short gun, shotgun. You put that on the table in front of the founders, they would say, yes, that's the arms we're talking about. Everything else can be bagged, tagged, and registered. Thank you.
And Mike Beilstein, please.
Thank you. I guess I have to agree slightly with Mr. Guthrie. I think that the founders had no idea what guns, what sort of weapons, what arms would be available in the future, and we certainly don't have a constitutional right, or it hasn't been interpreted that way, to have any weapons we want. I cannot have bazookas and atomic bombs, stored in my closet in my house. So we have some limits already on what arms people are allowed to bear, and I think that's appropriate. So I think there should be some limits on things like assault weapons, and there should definitely be registering of people who own guns for appropriate uses of self-defense, for hunting and target shooting as recreation. However, I think we have an incredible fascination with guns in this country, and it's promoted, of course, by the gun manufacturers, the arms industry. The United States is the source of almost half of the weapons that are exported across national boundaries, and we really have to cut back on this because it not only makes our lives more violent, it makes the whole world more violent. Thank you.
Now it's time for closing statements, so we'll be going alphabetically backwards and starting with Art Robinson, with 2 minutes for closing statements.
Okay. I've walked the businesses on every main street in District 4. If you're south of Eugene, many of the shops are closed. Many of them are occupied by single entrepreneurs who can't afford employees. And there's one that's thriving. If you talk to one of those businessmen and he says, well, what are you going to do for me if you're elected? And I say, I'll get the government off your back. He can't stop talking. He can't get another word in edgewise. The taxes, regulations, and statism that Mr. DeFazio has supported for 30 years is destroying these people. In Eugene and Corvallis, the businesses are thriving. You are fortunate. The main reason the businesses are thriving is that these two great universities bring very large amounts of money into your community, and that sloshes around the community and enriches everyone. And I hope that continues, but I'm afraid it won't. I'm afraid you are going down the same path that rural Oregon that votes for me is going. Because the overspending by these people who have been buying votes, in his case for 30 years, they have indebted our country in astronomical proportions. They have printed astronomical amounts of money. Every entrepreneur on earth is scared to death of what Washington has done to destroy the dollar and destroy our economy and leave us enormously in debts that we can never pay. And I'm afraid that when that goes down, Eugene and Corvallis, in spite of the great universities you have here, are going to go the same place as rural Oregon. And I will tell you, it's a lot harder to live in the city during a depression than it is to live in the countryside.
Okay, now we'll hear from Gil Guthrie.
My income, $1,104.90 a month, Social Security, and 90 cents of it disappears before it gets to my bank. My other benefits, I get $26 in food stamps. I have a 14-year-old car that runs perfectly, has a few zits, but a 14-year-old doesn't. I get LIHEAP assistance, and that's the millions that I'm making out of politics.
Congressman Peter DeFazio.
Well, we always say this is going to be the most important election of our time. I think this truly is. I'm deeply concerned about Donald Trump and those who support the agenda of Donald Trump, the income disparities in our country, the divisions in our country. Part of it has to do with the failed trade policy. I've opposed every failed trade agreement. I opposed Bill Clinton when he partnered with the Republicans to pass it. I opposed George Bush, and I'm opposing President Obama and his push for the TPP. It's wrong. We need to bring and keep those jobs home. Not everybody can go on and get a college education and work in a highly skilled, desk job. We need to manufacture things in this country, and we need to bring those jobs home for the many, many American people who would like to hold those jobs. Secondly, we've got to deal with income disparities. He, like Donald Trump, wants to basically eliminate taxes on the rich. He wants to do away with the capital gains tax. Well, his buddy Bob Mercer, the Wall Street billionaire, he gets something called carried interest, which means all the money he earns is considered a capital gain. Under his plan, the likes of Bob Mercer, the most privileged, richest people in our country, would pay nothing, and he would deregulate Wall Street. We've got to rein in the speculators on Wall Street. We've got to encourage the real economy. We've got to deal with income disparity in this country, and we've got to help, as I talked earlier, with our kids get a better education, get a leg up, and get a chance at the American dream. And I support the policies that'll do that, unlike my opponent who's going to throw in with the ultra right-wing Tea Party caucus in Congress, anti-government, government can't solve it, get the government off our back. Well, it turns out that the government can play a very, very essential role. As we talked about mental health, we've talked about student financial aid, we've talked about infrastructure. There are a host of things the government needs to be investing in, and we are not investing adequately in the future of this country and our kids and our grandkids, and I support policies that will do that. I would ask for your vote. I got the energy and the determination to go back and fight those who are on the other side and to support those who are on my side.
And now, Mike Beilstein, you get the last word.
Good, I get to say amen. You know, I would really like to present an exposition on geohistory and the history of humankind on the earth, and to do this all in 4 minutes I can't do, but I'm going to give you a reading list, and these are kind
2 minutes.
of books that I found very essential to my understanding of how the world works. First is one by a Corvallis author, Rob Dietz and Dan O'Neill. Enough is Enough is the title. Another is The Spirit Level by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett. And then a British author, Tim Jackson, Prosperity Without Growth. And then the Canadian writer, Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything. And these, I think, to understand where we're at, these books have given me a good background. We have to rethink what is our economy about. And we've thought of economy, we've thought of prosperity in terms of growth. Like there's no way people can be happy without growth. Now, unfortunately, we've reached a point where we're reaching the real limits to growth. Our ability to put stuff into the atmosphere, carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and change the climate is threatening not whole ecosystems, not only civilization, but the possibility for other life forms to even continue on Earth. So for 10,000 years, humans have learned it's good to do more, it's good to take over more of nature, and to be wealthier and to have greater control. And that's worked for 10,000 years, but it's starting to kill us right now. And we're poisoning the ocean. The ocean is acidic. We're losing the polar ice. We've lost the glaciers. Our weather systems are disrupted. We're having more disrupted weather. So the point is, we can't go on as we have now. We have to redefine what we mean by prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been a debate for the 4th Congressional District seat. And thank you so much to the candidates. Thanks to everyone at the City Club. I'm Rachel McDonald with KLCC.
Let's give one more round of applause to those are great people too. This is the time you can be loud.